right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Modernizing Enterprise Data Operations with Aqua Data Studio. My name is Darren Fulmer. I'm a technical engineer here at Idera, and I'll be walking you through Aqua Data Studio, demonstrating its key components so that you may be able to see how it could make your life easier in your database environments. So today, as I said, I'll give you a practical look at the key capabilities of Aqua Data Studio and how DBAs, developers, and analysts can all use it to get more value from their database tools. Aqua Data Studio is a cross-platform solution that lets you manage over 40 different relational, NoSQL, and cloud databases from one interface. You can write and tune SQL in a powerful query window, use the new AI Assist to help generate or optimize code, visually build queries, create charts and dashboards, and compare and sync schemas. You can move data in and out and connect to version control, all in one place. It runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and has been trusted for over 20 years. With the release of version 25 last year, we added the AI Assist to help you write better SQL faster and work more efficiently across your environments. And be sure to stick around until the end for a sneak peek at what's coming later this year for Aqua Data Studio. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the tool itself and start demonstrating all the key features and components of the tool. So here you can see Aqua Data Studio. And the first thing that you're going to do after you register and apply your license key is you're going to need to register your databases. So Aqua Data Studio allows DBAs, developers, and analysts to register and manage more than 40 database platforms from one interface. This simplifies multi-platform environments by eliminating the need for multiple tools, reducing training time, and enabling teams to work consistently across, say, Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, Snowflake, and many more database platforms. So here you can see the main layout of Aqua Data Studio. It is a very customizable tool. You have the ability to shrink windows out of your way. You can undock them if you want. You can move them to different locations. So the process of registering your databases is very simple and straightforward. You would go into the server menu, and then you would come down to register server. Now this is going to give you an alphabetical list of all the database platforms that are currently natively supported within Aqua Data Studio. As you can see, we have many different platforms. The items here as well allow you to do some filtering, some driver adjustments, and even set up scripts that allow you to be able to execute upon connections so that you don't have to repeat processes. A couple of things to point out is you have generic JDBC and generic ODBC connections as well for any database platform that exists in your environment that may not have a native connection. This still allows you to utilize Aqua Data Studio against those database platforms and be able to continue to operate in a single tool. Now, what it looks like for your when you are registering your databases is you'll see you have a lot of different information that you input. So you give your databases your name, you can choose if it's production, development, or test. And one of the things that you are allowed to do is select a tab color, and I'll touch on that in a moment when we're in the Query Analyzer window or the SQL editor. So authentication types are different and dynamic depending on what type of database platform you are connecting into. And then you, of course, fill out your location information, host, port, and all that. After you've done all that, you would hit test connection. If everything is working fine, you'll get 2 check marks, and then you can save it into your local database server list. And you can see that here. And you can see I have multiple types of database platforms. You can also set up subcategories, as I have, with cloud servers, local servers, VM servers, just to help you to organize a little bit better. Now, one of the things that a lot of users don't realize is Aqua Data Studio also allows you to register Excel sheets as a database in the environment. And you can see this database here is actually an Excel sheet if I look at the server properties. And you can see Microsoft Excel was selected. All it is a matter of naming it, just as you would any other database, and then you point it to the directory that that Excel sheet lives. So if you work with a lot of Excel sheets, you can utilize them as a database in Aqua Data Studio so that you can write SQL against the information that's in that Excel sheet, along with creating charts, graphs, and everything else that's available within Aqua Data Studio. Now, the key functionality of Aqua Data Studio is the query analyzer, or the SQL editor window. So the SQL editor provides a powerful workspace for writing and executing queries with features such as auto-completion, syntax highlighting, explain plans, and multi-result handling. Developers and DBAs can troubleshoot, tune, and validate code faster, while analysts can quickly test and refine queries in a streamlined environment. And to show you how that works, you can see I have multiple tabs here. And as I mentioned, one of the things is color coding. You can see here I have yellow, green, and red. It's fairly simplistic, but you can choose from a wide palette of colors. But the advantage of it is you can have multiple tabs open, and you don't want to be in, say, your production environment, dropping objects when you thought you were actually in your development environment or test environment. By color coding, you get a visual of where you're at. So for example, this here is a test environment. You can see my frame is yellow around my workspace. If I switch over here to the Snowflake environment, that's a development environment, you can see that the color has changed to green. And then let's say if I go into a production environment, I set as red, and my frame is actually red. Again, it's visually allowing you to know what kind of environments that you're in. Now, to demonstrate how to open up a new window and such, you can go ahead and go into your databases, for example, go to a table, and then you can bring up the right-click menu. Now, the right-click menu is also dynamic. It changes based off of what kind of object you're selecting against. Since this is a table, you can see there's a create, alter, drop. You can set the number of rows you want returned. You can also look at the table properties, and you have the ability to start scripting objects to a window, such as here, you can script an object to a new window as a select star, or an insert, or a create, and have Aqua Data Studio start writing the SQL for you. You also get a IntelliSense pop-up that will allow you to autocomplete things that you're typing as well. So for example, if I'm typing just a simple select star from, and I pause, this will allow the IntelliSense pop-up window to open. And from here, I can just go ahead and pick my table and double clicking on it, and it auto-loaded it for me. Now, Aqua Data Studio has all the features and functionality you would expect to find in a modern IDE tool. You have your ability to come up here and do lowercase and uppercase, undo, redo, copy and paste. You can do find, you can do formatting. If I come in here and right click, you can see here I can go ahead and execute. I can format my script. I can change the line comments and that sort of thing, all very easily within the editor. You can also change the results set that you want. If you know it's a large table, you only want a handful of results sets back here, you can just type it into the max results window and it'll only return that number of rows for you. Now, you can also automate a lot of things within the editor. So for example, if I come up to the automate menu, drop this down, I can do an insert statement, for example. It will start writing the SQL code again for me so that I don't have to type everything out. So, you know, it's very, very intuitive and user-friendly SQL editor with all the features you would expect to find. You can see that there's color coding for your query as well. And when you do a execution of your script, you'll get the results set in the lower window. And this result grid is fully manipulable. You can fully manipulate it. You can sort by column names if you want. You can actually move columns around. You can do searches in your data. You can come over to this window here and you can say, let's say I'm going to just start typing in a name, and you can see it narrowed that data down to what I was typing. You can also come in here to the count and right click on it, and you can change it to, like, say, a sum, an average, whatever best suits your needs. You have the ability to go ahead and open up a pivot grid and build out a pivot grid table really quick right in the editor. You can also launch it into the visual analytics, and I'll demonstrate that further on down in the presentation. You can also push this data out into Excel if you need to share it throughout the organization. You can do multiple queries within the editor itself as well. So for example, here you can see I have multiple statements in one window. You can actually execute all of them at once, and you will get a different grid result for each one of those statements. Or if you just only want to execute a single one, you can highlight it, execute, and it's only going to execute that one statement. So very useful if you have a lot of different SQL that you're working with, and you have multiple tabs that you can do comparisons against as well. Now, one of the things that has recently been added to Aqua Data Studio is the AI Assist. That is located over here on the left, and I'll walk through the process and demonstrate how the AI Assist can help speed up your SQL query creation and other functionality. So the AI Assist helps users generate SQL queries, can explain existing code, it can give you suggestions on optimizing directly within the editor. And this benefits both experienced developers looking to work faster and less experienced users who need some guidance, reducing errors and accelerating query development and performance tuning. So it's a fairly new feature that translates natural language into SQL queries. Currently, it's powered by OpenAI models and is designed to boost user productivity by simplifying the query writing, debugging, data, and analysis. So for instance, instead of writing complex SQL queries manually, users can describe what they need in natural language, and the AI Assist generates the SQL for them. This is particularly useful for developers, analysts, DBAs who want to save time and reduce errors. Now, it's important to note that the AI Assist was built with security in mind, because a lot of companies have concerns about how AI may be interacting with their data. Aqua Data Studio comes with the AI Assist built into the tool, but it is not enabled by default. It does require the user to enable it and also input an OpenAI API key. This allows your company to have full control over all aspects of what the model is doing. Now, there is also a configuration setting that as an enterprise customer, if you don't want any of your users utilizing the AI functionality, you can roll it out and it locks it down so that they can't go get their own key and input it. So again, security was at the forefront of developing this within Aqua Data Studio. It never touches data. It only looks at the model, the metadata of what you provide to it. And I'll demonstrate all that here momentarily. So with the AI assistant, the way it works is you open up a SQL editor window, and then you would open up your AI assistant. And then from here, you would go ahead and you would click on the share database metadata. And this is going to go ahead and open up a listing of all the objects for that database. Now here I've already selected the tables and views, and I've selected my set of tables. Then you would click next, and then it would start loading that metadata into the model so that you can utilize it when you're asking the queries that you want to have SQL built out for. We'll just give it a moment to load all the tables that were selected. And then once that's done, you can actually start asking it natural language questions within the search box. Now you control the number of queries, the number of inquiries, that sort of thing, so you can contain costs if that's a concern for your organization. But again, it's designed to help speed up users' productivity. So I'm going to apply those tables, and now I have my metadata for the queries to ask. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and ask it a quick question. For example, I'm going to ask it, which customers have placed the highest total order value in the past 2 years? So I'm going to send that question to the model, and it's going to take that information, it's going to look at the metadata I provided, and it's going to start creating SQL for me. Now, it is smart enough to know that if there's something missing, it's going to ask you for it. It is also geared towards only working with SQL so that somebody can't ask it general questions and eat up your tokens. It is there solely to focus on creating SQL for you or optimizing SQL. So after it's gone through and created the SQL for me, I can copy this and then I can go ahead and paste it into my editor. Now, this is designed so that your data is never touched by the model. So by putting the SQL into the editor, it's no different than if your developers have written the SQL manually and then executed it to get the data results set. So I'm going to go ahead and hit execute, and we'll get the data returned back. And also by copying it into the editor, it gives you full control over that statement. You can look it over, you can determine if it's what your need, if it's meeting your needs, and you can make modifications to it before you execute it or after executing it. So you can actually come in here and change the date, for example, or the number of months, or instead of the order value being descending, you can do it ascending. So you have full control over what is there presented. Now, you don't have to keep typing in the box here. You can actually have a running conversation with the AI assist by adding comments. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it another question. And then type it in here. So you can type in your comment. And then you can come up here to this little box that generates SQL with AI. I can highlight my statement and click on that. And you'll see it moved my statement over into the AI assist. It's searching the metadata, it's providing me with a statement, and it auto copies it into my editor. So again, it's a running conversation with the AI assist. So you can branch off of what you've originally gotten. You can make modifications, execute it, change it. There's all the functionality of as if you wrote it yourself. Now, there's a couple of other scenarios where AI Assist can benefit end users. So for example, if a DBA is being asked to find out what may be causing things to run slow, they can leverage the AI Assist as well, and I'll demonstrate that. So let's say a developer comes to a DBA. They suspect that there may be a stored procedure that's running slow. So they ask the DBA to take a look at it. Now, when we loaded the metadata, if you noticed, it only asks for tables and views. But we can still ask it to do some of that optimization for us. So for example, I'm going to copy a statement in here, and then I'm going to ask it to debug a stored procedure for me. So you can see here, debug the procedure, AI calculate total orders for customer 101 and explain the logic. So I'm going to send that to the model. And now it's thinking, and because procedures are not something that you can select in the metadata, it's going to tell me, please provide the code or logic of the procedure as I can assist you in debugging and explaining it. So all you need to do is then take the stored procedure, paste it into the AI Assist, send it to the model, and now it's going to go ahead and take a look at the tables and views I selected. It's going to look at the create or replace statement of that stored procedure, and it's going to give me some recommendations. So here it's telling me that the procedure has a logical issue in the where clause. And if you notice here, you can see I deliberately wrote it poorly. The where clause is customer ID equals customer ID. So the parameter is being compared to itself, which will always evaluate to true. And to fix this, you should use a different name for the parameter or qualify it with the procedure name. And here is a corrected SQL. So here again, I can copy this. I can then drop it into the editor. And then I can execute that to create or replace that stored procedure with the recommendations. And you can see here where it's modified the where clause. So instead of running through hundreds of lines of code, you can have the AI Assist do that query for you or that review and make recommendations on how to fix it. Now, another way that the AI Assist can help you is in optimization of some of your SQL code. Now, when you're executing your queries in the editor, one of the features that you can turn on is the execution plan. So what you can do is you can go ahead and take a query. For example, this query here. I can then go ahead and execute this into the editor and then have it bring back any information that it may have. And then once it brings back results or lack of results, what I can do is I can open up the explain plan and take a look at how is that statement moving through my environment. So here I've got the results set. I can go to the execution plan, and this is going to give me a visual of how that statement is moving through my environment. I can look at the cost of all the different sorts, the loops, everything like that, and I can see where it's struggling. From here, what I can do is I can also come in and look at an explain diagram and get a visual of how that's moving through my environment. I can also come in and I can then take it and add it to my whiteboard. So this adds the statement to the whiteboard and also the detailed information of the explain plan on my whiteboard. So now what I can do is I can actually take this statement and I can input it into my AI assist. So I can say, you know, can you optimize the following SQL, paste it in. I can send it to the model, and then it will give me a results, you know, looking at the code, and it'll come back with something very similar to these changes. Now what I can do with this is I can take a look at that, see if this works better in my environment. I can go ahead and execute it and bring up the results of the modified or optimized SQL that the AI assist has provided me. And then what I can then look at the explain plan for the modification. So I'll go into the execution plan, and you'll notice things are a little different here. So now what I can do is I can right click on it as well, and I can add it to my whiteboard. Now this gives me the ability to then compare the SQL between the two. I can then also compare the costs and the run of how it moves through my environment to see if those improvements help and those recommendations are beneficial. So you cut down on the amount of line by line code you're looking at to try to help optimize your SQL that's in your environment to make improvements as you go. So those are some of the capabilities of the AI Assist in Aqua Data Studio that can definitely benefit your DBAs, your developers, your analysts to do their job much more quickly and much more efficiently. So one of the things that after you've executed your queries, you got your data, you know, you want to slice and dice it in a visual manner so that you can build out charts and graphs, or you go back and we'll touch on the visual analytics here in a moment. But if you cannot use the AI Assist because of security concerns in your organization, Aqua Data Studio also has a visual query builder functionality. The visual query builder is built into Aqua Data Studio. It's located under the query builder menu, or you can right click on a table and launch a query builder as well. And what this is going to allow you to do, so for example, I'm going to go ahead and open up a query builder window, and it's a free floating window that allows you to visually build SQL in your environment. Or if, let's say, it's an environment you're not familiar with syntaxing and such, it can handle all the syntaxing code for you. Now I'll walk through a scenario of building out SQL that you can then execute, and demonstrate also a much more complex visual query built out so that you can see how you can how it works and the full capabilities of the tool. So for example here, I'm just going to go ahead and drag employee over into my workspace and drop it there. And you'll see it's starting to write SQL code for me. So here you can see it's just a select star statement based off of this. But let's say I want to focus on a couple of the columns within the SQL. So what I can do is I can just double click on them. And you see they were added up here under the select statement, and it is modified by SQL for me. Now, one of the things I want to do is I want to add a function onto my salary. So I'm going to put salary up here, and I'm going to go into my functions, and I'm going to go ahead and add a sum. And you'll see it added the sum of the salary. But because I'm doing a sum on that, I need to also group it. So I'm going to go ahead and group by department. So I'm going to drag that over into my group by and drop it in. And you'll notice here it's now added that into my SQL statement. Now from here I can go ahead and execute if I want. So I just come up here to the green arrow and I execute my SQL. And I'm looking at my grid results, very similar to the editor results. And I'm thinking I only want to focus on a certain level of salary. So I want to go ahead and make some changes to my SQL. So I'm going to go ahead and come back over into the SQL window. And I'm going to go ahead and drag salary over into the having box. Now this is going to open up a window that's going to allow me to input different information for that having statement. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and change the, from name, I'm going to change it to function. And I'm going to actually select sum from the radio button or drop down. And then I want it to be greater than or equal to something. So I'm going to change the operator. And then I'm going to add that value. So I just only want to know what departments are, 60,000 and above in my query. So here I can see a preview of what that statement is going to be. I can hit save. It's now added that to my statement. And from here, I can go ahead and execute again and determine if that's what I want. And you can see here that it does give you the ability or reduce the number of departments that came back. And if you notice this as column 2, you can actually come up in and you can create an alias. So you can name it whatever you want. But to give you an idea of some of the other capabilities of the query builder, you can look at this more complex SQL here. So this one, you can see it's selecting multiple tables. There's multiple inner joins between the keys. You can actually click on a join and make changes to it to make it a full join, make it an outer join, whatever you want. You can change the operator as well. You can then add, different where clauses. You can group by multiple columns, having statements. You can then order by. And then if you notice here, there are some aliases added. So if I execute this, it will give me a result set returned, and it says my alias count orders and totals are here in the columns instead of just column 1, column 2. So as you can see, there's a lot of capability in being able to build out different types of SQL utilizing the query builder. Once you've written it all out, if you want, you can also come in here and you can highlight and copy your statement and share it, or you can also just come up and save your query builder into your file system. And I'll talk about the file system a little bit later, but that's another way for you to be able to share within the organization. Now, with regards to the ability to take your data and then process it utilizing charts and graphs, Aqua Data Studio has a visual analytics component built in that allows you to execute your SQL statements, then to launch the visual analytics workbook and be able to build out charts and graphs. Now, the visual analytics tool is going to give you a free floating window as well. And the visual analyzer, it transforms your query results into interactive charts and dashboards. You can analyze and look at it, so that analysts and business stakeholders can explore data visually to uncover trends and insights, while technical teams can validate results and share those findings without exporting data to separate BI tools. So I'll walk you through how easy it is for you to build out different types of charts and graphs so that you can see the power behind it and the ease of use. So what happens is when you launch the visual analytics from your icon here or launches it from the main menu, it's going to go ahead and open a free floating window, and it's going to take a look at the columns and data types of your result set, and it's going to break that out into different dimensions and measures based off of the data type. So then you can start dragging and dropping your dimensions and measures over into your columns and rows and start building out different types of graphs. So for example, here, I'm going to go ahead and drag country over into columns. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag land area, for example, into my rows. And this is starting to build out a simple bar chart for me with the data that's there. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add data labels. So I'm going to come into the label box here. I'm going to click on it and select show data labels. Now I have the data represented on the bars. And I want to go ahead and do an analysis of the data here by adding a reference line. So I'm going to go ahead and go into analysis. And then I'm going to go ahead into the reference lines. And I'm going to say add line, band, or box. Now from here, I want to do a band in this particular situation. So I'm going to do a band. And I'm going to change the maximum to average so that I can clearly see in this example which countries exceed the average landmass and which are within the average. Now I'm going to, just for visual sake, change it to a dotted line at the top, and I'm going to change the fill from gray to orange just so it stands out a little bit more, and change the opacity of that band. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply that, and you'll see it's been added here to my chart. But everything is kind of mixed, so I want to go ahead and sort it as a descending or ascending, whichever best suits my needs. But here I want to go ahead and sort descending. So I'm going to click on the sort descending, and you'll see here it's cleaned it up nicely. Now you can also change it to horizontal or vertical if that better suits your needs. You can also come in and change colors of the chart. Now, one thing about the visual analytics as well is that you build your charts out in what are called worksheets. You can see my list of worksheets down here. Now, the worksheets, you can right-click on them. You can change the name of them, which is recommended, so it's easier to find your different charts. You can also utilize different types of charts. By default, it's set to automatic, so it tries to build the best chart for the dimensions and measures you choose. But if you want something different, that's very simple to do. You come into the visualization and you can pick different charts. You'll notice that there are charts in color and some grayed out. The color charts, you are using the correct number of dimensions or measures so that you can use that chart. If it's grayed out, you're missing something. Like, so for example, a horizon chart, I need at least one date function, either dimension or measure listed into my columns or rows. So very intuitive, helps you to build out your different charts. Now, your worksheets, you can have multiple types of charts. The simple pie chart. You can also come in to your different charts. You can highlight a particular piece of the chart so that you can see the data information. You can also come in here and view the data behind that piece of your chart, so that if you want to, you can export it out into Excel and share it with that region so that they know why their chart information is what it is. You can, again, choose different types of charts, radar chart. You can also do multiple charts within a worksheet. So this is a weekly sum of sales and weekly sum of profits, so you can visually see the differences. And anytime you're working with a calendar item, you do have a drop down that allows you to change it. So day, week, month, quarterly, yearly, whatever your needs are in that aspect. Different type of pie chart with more detailed information. And then also, again, the bar chart that we built out. Now, once you've built out your charts, you can then move them over into a dashboard. And the dashboard icon is here, or the main menu. And you open up a dashboard and you drag your chart, your worksheet over into the dashboard. And then this is where you can actually go into your data and you can do refreshes. You can go into your file and export it out into a PDF or an HTML. But the beautiful thing about it is if there are charts that you continue to use over and over again, like something that's run weekly, monthly, quarterly, you can build the chart, you can save this chart over into your file system, and then you can just relaunch it at that interval, let's say once a month, and all you need to do is then hit this refresh data. This will refresh the data from your database into the chart. It will make changes to your chart, then you drag it over into your dashboard and create a PDF of it and share it with your organization. So very user-friendly, very easy to do. Now, one of the other capabilities of Aqua Data Studio is the ability to model your existing environments or model a new environment using the ER modeler. Now, the ER modeler you can launch from the main menu here. That allows data architects and database teams to design, visualize, and document database structures. So it helps organizations plan new systems, reverse engineer existing databases, and help maintain data governance standards by clearly mapping relationships and helping to enforce design consistency. So if you are reverse engineering, you'll get a ER model window that's free floating as well. Now this is the Oracle environment that we've been doing a lot of work in. You'll see it lists tables, views, the relationships between them, and you get a visual of all those items. Now you can zoom in and out so that you get a better view of different objects. You can click on a table, for example, and you can get detailed information on the column names, the data type, and that sort of thing. You can click on a relationship as well, and you can see where the parent and child are. If there are any comments, you can come into the entities, and let's say you want to add a table to this model. Let's say I want to add a table. I'm going to click on it, bring it over, and I have a blank table. Now I can double click on that to bring up the properties box, and I can start inputting all the details of that entity. Database, schema, give it a name, and then I can start coming into the columns and naming the columns, changing the data types, giving it a different length, adding null or not null. Now, it's just as easy to remove objects from your environment as well. Just right click on it and hit delete, and this deletes it from your model. Now, any modifications you make to your model, they are not changing your database environment. They're only changing the model here. However, you can then create a DDL script to make those changes within your environment. So I can come up into the tools menu here. I can hit generate script, and it will go ahead and give me a DDL listing of all these objects in my model so that I can make, let's say I want to take my production environment, I want to create a new test environment. I can reverse engineer the production into a model, generate a script, make some slight modifications to the naming if I want, and then I can build out that test environment very easily. You can also do some simple conversions as well. So let's say this is an Oracle environment, and I want to maybe set up a test environment in Snowflake to see how my structures would handle in a Snowflake environment. So I can come into my Oracle model, I can say convert model, and then I can actually scroll down and select Snowflake, and then I can hit next. I'm just going to keep the defaults, hit OK, and now I have a model of those tables, those relationships in Snowflake. Now you can see in production categories, Oracle, it's number and varchar. In Snowflake, it's decimal and varchar. So it converts those data types. And from here, all I would need to do is go into my tools, generate the script, open up my Snowflake, build out that environment, and I can then start playing around in Snowflake with a copy of my, say, Oracle production. Very easy. Now, Aqua Data Studio can handle quick little projects. It's not designed as an enterprise level conversion, transform, load, all that. It's not designed for that, but can definitely handle some of these simplistic tasks that a lot of DBAs or developers, architects have to deal with. Now, that brings us to some of the tools menu capability of Aqua Data Studio. So within Aqua Data Studio, you have a tools menu that allows you to do data imports, data exports. You can do schema script generation. You can do object searching. You can do comparisons. So if you go into the compare menus, you can do data compares, schema compares and synchronization, a lot of different other compares. You can also come in here and you can do data masking. So if you don't want your particular data to be seen by contract developers, you can mask it with Aqua Data Studio so that they're only seeing what you type in or null values. You also have the ability to create random tables and data with Aqua Data Studio for load testing. Now, a lot of times companies will take their production model, they'll create a test environment, and they'll copy over production data into that test model. That's usually not the best use of the data because test environments are never as secure as production environments, and it does open up potential security risks. So Aqua Data Studio has the table and data generator so that you can quickly generate millions of rows of data that you can then load test against and that sort of thing without exposing any production data. Now, just to give you a quick example of a schema compare, what you would do in your environment is, let's say you have two schemas here you want to compare. Very simple, you left click on one, then you would control left click on the other, and you'll notice that they're both highlighted. And then you would right click and you would come down into schema compare or schema synchronization. Schema compare is a read only, so you can only visually see the differences. You can't make any changes. Schema synchronization will allow you to make modifications in your environment. So once you select one or the other, what that's going to look like is it's going to bring up the result set here. So you'll pick all your objects that you want to compare. And then it's going to give you a result set window that looks like this. So you have identical objects between the source and target. You have objects that are only in the target. You have objects that are only in the source. And then you have objects that exist in both the source and target, but have differences. So you can see here, I have one of the tables that they're identical. There's no differences between the two. I'll come up to one of these tables here and select it. Now here, there's only one slight change. If you'll notice, this is highlighted. So in the source, it's a 10 character long bar chart. In the target, it's 15 characters. And you can see it highlights specifically what's different. Now, if I come up into this table, you can see there's a lot of things different. This one contains a trigger. The naming of the columns is different. The character types are different. The lengths are different. There are nulls and not nulls. So when you synchronize, what it allows you to do, it gives you this column here to where you can select your objects. So for example, if I wanted to sync this here, I can select it. Then I would come up to schema sync or synchronize schema. I would click on that. It will give me the option to pick which way I want to go. Do I want to sync the source or do I want to sync the target? And then I do that and it runs the script and makes that modification and change. And then you can actually rerun this schema synchronization and double check to make sure those changes were made according to what you wanted it to do. Now, we've mentioned that, users of Aqua Data Studio are, developers, DBAs, analysts, and there are tools built into Aqua Data Studio for the DBA that allows them to do some of their functionality without ever leaving the tool. And that's found in the DBA tools menu. So in the DBA's tool menu, you open that up and you'll notice that there is a subset of the 40 supported database platforms. These are the most commonly utilized. And then what you can do is you can scroll down, let's say go into Oracle. And you'll see that you can launch your instance manager or your log manager. You can do rollbacks. You can look at session managers, your security, all of those things you can look at and make changes to within Aqua Data Studio without having to go out of the tool and launch another third-party tool to actually go in and make those modifications or changes. Now the items that you have available to you are different, they're dynamic depending on what you choose. If I go into SQL Server, if you notice it has SQL Server agents, you can look at your instances, storage, that sort of thing. If I go into like MySQL, you know, again, it's a smaller subset than Oracle or SQL Server, and you can look again at your different securities and storage and so forth. But they're there so that you do not have to actually leave the tool to manage some of these simple tasks that you might have to do day to day in your role. Now, I mentioned before the file system quite a bit, how you can save your files to the file system so that you can actually do collaboration. And that leads us into some of the version control capabilities. So Aqua Data Studio has version control integration built into it. Integration with the different version control systems allows development teams to track database changes alongside application code. So this supports collaborative development, it improves accountability, and it helps to align database lifecycle management with modern DevOps practices. Now, Aqua Data Studio supports several different version control systems. If you go up to the file system here and you right click, you'll see version control, and you'll notice it supports Subversion, CVS, Perforce, and Git. And Git being one of the most popular out there right now. So this allows you to save files into your version control environment and track different changes so that you can have control over what is being used in your environment. Now, if I wanted to, I can go in. You'll see here, these files are all within my version control system. And you'll see 3 of them are green. That means they've been committed and they're checked in. You'll see one with an exclamation mark. That means it's been changed and it needs me to review it and submit it and save it into the version control system. Now, when you're in here, I can come in here, I can right click it, and I can come in, I can do a quick commit if I wanted to. I can also go into version control and I can look at the history of that, where it's been changed and modified. I can come in, I can go back into my client and look at differences here as well, look at the different branches. I can do merges, you know, I can push it up into the version control, commit it in. So you have all those capabilities right within Aqua Data Studio so that you're not having to launch Git through a web browser and go in and do all that kind of information changes or modifications or reviews from another window. It's all built into Aqua Data Studio. Now, the file system as well, you can have files that you save locally, and you can take these files and you can share them with other Aqua Data Studio users. As long as they have the connection for that environment, they can just take that file, click on it, make their connection, and pick up right where you left off. Or if your organization is large and you're not utilizing version control, but let's say you have a group of developers, they write SQL for the analysts, and the analysts don't know SQL, but they need the data to do their charts and graphs. You can go in and you can actually set up a network drive in your file system so that the developers can write out the SQL, they can upload it to the network drive, the analysts can download it, execute it, take the query results set, dump it into the charting tool of Visual Analytics, build out the charts, and everybody's able to get all of their work done utilizing the same tool but different functionality within it. one of the other final things to mention is the history and logging within Aqua Data Studio. So there's SQL history and logging features that provide a searchable record of executable statements and system activity. So developers and DBAs can audit changes, they can reproduce past work, and they can also troubleshoot issues more effectively by referencing detailed execution histories. So these are accessed through the query menu, and this is where you'll find your SQL history. And if I click on the SQL history, that's going to bring up a window of all the items that I have executed, all the SQL I've executed. So you can see here, it tells me the date and time, when it started, when it ended, what kind of database platform it was, how many statements were executed, what the statement was. I can pick and choose, so I can click through and you'll see it's changing what that SQL is. You can look at the rows, database name, server information, how long did it take, was it successful or did it fail, and so on and so forth. So it helps you to audit what is being successful, what's not being successful, so on and so forth. Now you can change the max history, and then it will auto archive anything past that history. You can go into the archives and you can search for things, so you have the reusability here, so you're not having to reinvent the wheel. Let's say somebody asks you, that query you ran 3 months ago, can you rerun it again? You can go back into your archive, find it, pull it up, load it into an editor window, and execute it. Now, the SQL log, you can turn that on through the help menu, and it's located here. And the SQL log starts monitoring all activity, not just the SQL that you're executing, but also the SQL that your database is executing behind the scenes as well. And again, it gives you this, start time and how long it ran, who ran it, what user, what was the statement, so that you can get an audit trail of different activity within your environment. Now you have to turn it on to start tracking all of that or logging all of that. So you have to remember to go in and activate it first thing. That way, if 2 hours in you've run into a problem, you can go back and look at your log and you can actually see what happened there. Now there are a lot of resources available to users of Aqua Data Studio. You can access those through the help file, and you can go into your online documentation, and that will give you a searchable wiki of all the features and functionality of Aqua Data Studio and how to activate or utilize, how to set it up, if there's any manipulations that need to be done. Some database platforms need a driver separately installed. All that information is located within the wiki. You can also open up support tickets if there's an issue with the tool. So you have a lot of detailed information here within the help menu. I know it was a lot to cover. We wanted to go ahead and share the capabilities of Aqua Data Studio with everybody because we see a lot of customers, new users, they buy it for a particular piece of the tool and don't realize what functionality is available to them at their fingertips. And we want to ensure our customers get the best rate of return on their investment that they can get. Now, I know that at the beginning I had mentioned that we're going to touch on a sneak peek of what's coming in Aqua Data Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to the presentation and just quickly talk about a couple of things that we are excited about within Aqua Data Studio for 2026. So in 2026, one of the features that we continue to build on is platform compatibility and optimization. So over the next several releases, we're going to continue our commitment to that by keeping Aqua Data Studio aligned with the latest enterprise databases and operating system updates. So in Q1, Q2, we plan on delivering major version support for MongoDB 16, 17, and 18. And we're looking at down the road to also incorporate Postgres 16 through 18, Teradata 20, and driver enhancements for like MySQL, Amazon Redshift, Snowflake, to make sure that there's a reliability and performance in all those connections. On top of that, operating system alignment continues as well. So there should be some coming updates for Ubuntu. And in Q3, Q4, we hope to be introducing additional platforms by expanding that 40+ database platform environment. And that'll be dependent on customer environments and their requests, what they're looking for to be able to be natively supported by Aqua. And the goal here is simple. It's one tool that stays current with your entire data ecosystem. Now, also with that, I know I touched on security a couple of different times, but security and enterprise readiness also remain a core focus across every release. In the last release, 25.5, we added improved Kerberos support for Oracle, and we plan on continuing to expand different authentication capabilities, like different passwordless authentication, support for some of the most requested authentication and types. So look for that in Q3, Q4. We, again, will be aligning with what our customers are asking us for, what they're putting into their environments based off of security needs. We're also improving connection management. So there's going to be enhancements that are going to go into the query analyzer, that'll help organizations better control sessions. Also, like running production environments, such as, continuously running. Each release is going to include ongoing customer-driven improvements as well. That'll help with stability, reliability, scalability across those large distributed environments. Because we want to make sure Aqua Data Studio remains secure and dependable for our enterprise operations. And finally, there are plans to add AI innovation throughout the platform as well. And in Q3, we're hoping to extend the AI capabilities by adding support for Google Gemini models, also updating the OpenAI models to the current releases, and combining some ongoing enhancements to streamline some development, reduce some manual effort, that sort of thing. We want to make sure teams can work more efficiently across these modern complex data environments. And again, security will continue to be a focus for the AI functionality. That the AI can work with you side by side and not try to take over what you're doing. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover. It was a lot, and I thank you for your time. We can go ahead and take a couple of questions real quick before we end out the session. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the question box, and we'll see what you've asked. So the first question is, can Aqua Data Studio help reduce tool sprawl in complex data environments? Yes. The beautiful thing about Aqua Data Studio is that instead of maintaining separate tools for different database platforms, you can do all of that through Aqua Data Studio with your relational, NoSQL, cloud databases, all from that single interface. And this helps reduce licensing overhead. It simplifies training, and it helps to create standardized workflows across your organization. Second question is my data secure when using the AI assistant? So yeah, as I mentioned, the AI assistant never touches your data. So it operates within your controlled environment and is just focused on helping you generate, explain, or optimize SQL. It does not access or manipulate your actual database data, only the metadata that you provide to it, and then you set up how you want the API to utilize any metadata that you provide. And this is designed to allow organizations to make sure they're in alignment with any internal governance and security policies they may have. All right, so I know we're over and I want to be conscious of your guys' time. I want to thank you all for joining. If there are other questions that we haven't gotten to, we'll send those out in email. But if you have other questions, you can reach out to your rep, or you can reach directly out to me at darren.fulmer@idera.com. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you have. So thank you for your time today. If you're interested in seeing these capabilities in more depth, the next step could be a hands-on demo or a trial of the software. And we'd love to continue the conversation and explore how Aqua Data Studio can help you avoid tool sprawl. You can visit aquadatastudio.com for additional documentation. There's videos on the resource page, product updates, and all that. So again, thank you everybody for your time, and have a great day.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Simona, and I'm from the marketing team here at Aqua Data Studio. I'd like to welcome you to our session today, How to Build Flexibility into Your Data Stack, lesson from Sybase ACE and Azure Data Studio. Joining us today is Darren Fulmer, a solution engineer at Aqua Data Studio. He'll be presenting how Aqua Data Studio helps you manage migration, maintain productivity, and unify your environment without workflow loss. We're looking forward to showing you what's possible, but before we get started, just a quick reminder that we'll be hosting a short Q&A at the end of the event. Please submit any question you have using the question panel during the webinar. After the session, you can visit aquadatastudio.com to sign up for a free trial of the latest version. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on demand after the event. Let's dive in. Darren, over to you.
Thank you, Simona, for that introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining. So to kick things off, let me take a moment to frame what this session is really going to be about. The title says we're talking about flexibility in your data stack. But in reality, we are talking about the pressure every data team is feeling as tools evolve, retire, or shift direction in ways that we cannot control. Thanks again for joining. and I appreciate everyone taking time out of their day because this topic affects almost every data team right now. We are in a period where the tools we depend on are changing faster than ever. Some are being retired quietly, some are losing investment, others are becoming harder to support because the community around them is shrinking. And nothing shows this better than two real examples: Sybase ASE on the database side and Azure Data Studio on the tooling side. Neither of these disappeared overnight, but both have reached a point where organizations are being pushed to rethink parts of their stack, whether they wanted to or not. So my goal today goes beyond simply explaining what is happening. I want to help you understand why these shifts are happening, what they teach us, and how you can use these lessons to design a more flexible and resilient environment. This is about lowering risk, reducing disruption, and gaining control of your roadmap. If you take away one idea from today, it is that flexibility is not something you patch in at the end. It is something you intentionally design into your workflows so that change becomes manageable instead of chaotic. So let me start by walking you through what we will cover today so you know exactly where we are headed. This agenda is structured to build up the story step by step rather than jumping straight into tooling. We will begin with the bigger picture and look at the evolution that is happening around all of us. And this helps ground the conversation so the rest of the material makes more sense. Then we will move into two real case studies. Sybase ASE and Azure Data Studio are both hitting different kinds of transitions, and they provide real lessons for what happens when tools reach end of life or lose support. After that, we'll talk about what really happens behind the scenes when a vendor deprecates a tool. The reality is never as simple as swapping tool A for tool B. There are workflow impacts, capability gaps, and ripple effects inside your team. Then we'll shift into what it means to design flexibility into your data stack. This is the core of the conversation. It is about building an environment that absorbs change instead of being broken by it. And finally, we will talk about how Aqua Data Studio fits into this flexibility mindset, not as a single point replacement, but as a tool that helps you simplify, standardize, and prepare your environment for the future. And we will close with the main takeaways you can bring back to your team. So the title of this slide is The Evolution Reality. And it is a reality every one of us lives with. Technology does not sit still. Progress brings new capabilities, but it also makes older tools obsolete. And the interesting part is how uneven this evolution is across an organization. You can have highly modernized systems living right next to applications that have barely been updated in 10 years. You can have a cloud data warehouse sitting alongside a legacy on-prem transactional system that is 2 decades old, and for a long time, that mix is manageable. But eventually, one of those older systems becomes the bottleneck. It may be security updates slowing down, it may be hardware becoming more expensive, or just the talent pool shrinking. The real challenge is not that things evolve. The challenge is whether your tools and your architecture can absorb that evolution. Teams that build rigid, single-purpose environments often find themselves scrambling when a vendor changes course. Everything becomes reactive, costly, and stressful. But the teams that build in room to grow are the ones who shift with minimal disruption. They can swap out components without rebuilding everything. They can modernize at their own pace. And that is the flexibility mindset we're talking about today. So this next slide highlights just how fast change is happening. And the slide title says it clearly, the pace of change. The clearest example right now is AI. In less than 2 years, we went from GPT 3.5 to GPT 4, then 4.0, now 5. And suddenly there are multimodal models from multiple vendors competing for dominance. Models evolve almost quarterly at this point. If you built your processes around a static model, you probably felt that pain. Something you depended on shifted out from under you and you had to adapt quickly. We have seen the same behavior in data engineering. For a decade, ETL, or extract, transform, and load pipelines dominated. Then cloud warehouses emerged, and the conversation shifted rapidly towards ELT, extract, load, transform, and modern transformation frameworks. Companies with flexible data pipelines adapted almost immediately. Companies tied to older tooling and older architecture discovered that catching up was not a minor adjustment. It often became a major overhaul. The takeaway here is simple. Change is not slowing down. Agility is no longer optional. It is part of the normal operation of your environment for data teams. And here we emphasize that architectural agility matters. And when you look at the teams that handle major transitions well, there is a pattern there. They made decisions years earlier that gave them breathing room. These teams choose tools that spanned multiple platforms. They avoided hard lock-in. They built abstraction layers where possible, so the underlying platform could change without breaking the workflow. They standardized on tooling that reduced fragmentation and gave them consistent interfaces across different environments. And this pays off during modernization projects. Instead of a 2-year crisis with high costs, the transition becomes something you can phase in without disrupting operations. Instead of training entire teams on brand new tooling, you evolve the existing environment. And instead of worrying about a vendor decision that forces your hand, you stay in control of your roadmap. And this is why agility is not a technical term, it's a strategic one. So let's take a look at 2 real-world examples that will anchor our discussion. When you look at, excuse me, when you look at Sybase ASE nearing the end of mainstream maintenance, and you look at Azure Data Studio being retired by Microsoft, you see 2 very different types of change, but the same underlying problem. Organizations are being forced to adjust their tools because the vendors have changed direction. In both cases, customers did not choose the timeline. They did not choose the strategic shift. They did not choose the retirement. They simply woke up one day and realized the tools they rely on will not be viable long term. These 2 case studies are important because they show the downstream impacts. They show what happens when the ecosystem shrinks and when updates slow. And more importantly, they show what a flexible environment makes possible compared to a rigid one. So let's talk about the decline of Sybase ASE. And it is worth calling out that Sybase ASE was once a major player in the industry. It powered financial trading systems, telecom networks, and enterprise transactional workloads for decades. It was stable, fast, and widely trusted. But over time, the signs of decline became hard to ignore. Release cycles slowed dramatically. 11 years passed between version 16.0 and 16.1. That's unheard of in modern database life cycles. The customer base shrank to under 550 organizations worldwide, and surveys show that most of the remaining customers plan to leave the platform within the next few years. And the biggest issue is the talent pool. Most Sybase professionals have already moved on to other platforms like SQL Server or Oracle. And younger engineers, they rarely train on ASE because it no longer offers any kind of career longevity. This creates a scenario where even maintaining the system becomes harder, more expensive, and riskier. The lesson here is that even strong platforms can eventually fade. And if your environment depends entirely on one tool, you eventually reach a point where change is forced instead of chosen. So where are the Sybase customers actually moving? And interestingly, most are not following the official vendor recommendation to move to SAP HANA. Instead, the migrations tend to cluster around platforms that feel familiar, stable, and well supported. SQL Server is one of the most common destinations because the migration path is relatively straightforward, and the talent pool there is strong. PostgreSQL is growing rapidly as well, thanks to its low cost and strong open source community. And some organizations move to Oracle or MySQL, depending on their internal overall strategy. The pattern is clear. Organizations are choosing platforms with large communities, active development, long-term roadmaps, and plentiful expertise. They want to avoid repeating the same situation where they are dependent on a platform that may decline again. And this reinforces the broader theme that flexibility and ecosystem strength are important factors when choosing a database platform. So here we're going to highlight Azure Data Studio, which is another example of a tool hitting end of life. In early 2025, Microsoft announced that Azure Data Studio will be retired with support ending in 2026. The recommended path forward is to use Visual Studio Code with the SQL extension. Now, Visual Studio Code is a great code editor, but it is not a full database IDE. To recreate what Azure Data Studio offered, you end up installing plugins, configuring additional extensions, and stitching together functionality that used to be built in. The workflow becomes less unified and more fragmented. And for teams that rely on Azure Data Studio for querying, analytics, schema compare, and object management, this transition creates a real gap. Not because VS Code is bad, but because it is not a direct replacement. And once again, organizations do not control this timeline. They simply have to adjust to the vendor strategy. This example reinforces the importance of using tools that are not tied too closely to one vendor's internal priorities. And, this slide asks a great question. What actually happens when a tool is deprecated? The public announcement is usually short and clean, but the real impact happens quietly inside your teams. The vendor now controls the timeline. Your long-term modernization roadmap suddenly becomes urgent. Replacement tools rarely offer one-to-one feature parity, so gaps start to appear. And to fill those gaps, teams add temporary tools, manual workarounds, and custom scripts. Technical debt begins to accumulate as people try to keep things running while planning a migration. You also see a fragmentation of workflow. Instead of one tool, you now have multiple half solutions. If your team is busy, these temporary solutions often stay in place far longer than planned. All of this increases cost, introduces risk, and slows down your productivity. This is why planning for flexibility is so important before deprecation happens. So let's talk about the true cost of rigid tooling. And the biggest thing to emphasize is that the cost is not the license price. It is everything that happens around the tool. Rigid tools increase migration costs because you cannot easily shift away from them. They increase training costs because there are no natural skill paths to modern platforms. They increase operational overhead because you often need multiple tools to achieve what one unified tool used to do. And they increase risk because the timeline for change is controlled by your vendor. Over time, rigid tools create a dependency that becomes expensive and limiting. They trap organizations into older workflows and force costly decisions when change eventually comes. But there are alternatives to this. And here we're going to introduce the alternative, the idea of building for flexibility. And the key point here is that flexibility is a design choice. You can create an environment that absorbs change rather than resisting it. This means choosing tools that support multiple platforms so you are not locked into one vendor. It means avoiding tightly coupled integrations that make future migrations painful. It means preferring tools with long, consistent release histories. And it means standardizing where possible so your team is not learning new workflows for every database. This slide sets the stage for how Aqua Data Studio supports this approach. But the concept applies to any data team. The more flexible your architecture is, the more control you have over your future roadmap. So let's talk a little bit about Aqua Data Studio in the context of flexibility. Aqua Data Studio is built with the idea that teams should not have to juggle multiple tools or constantly adapt to shifting vendor roadmaps. It supports more than 40 database platforms. It works across Windows, Mac, and Linux. And it brings together querying, analytics, schema compare, version control integration, ER modeling, data editing, and much, much more inside one single application. You do not need plugins or separate tools for any of this core functionality. And the product has more than 20 years of active development, which provides a level of stability and predictability that many organizations appreciate. And because it is not tied to a single database vendor, customers have the freedom to adopt whatever platforms make sense for their strategy. And this is where the story transitions from explaining the challenge to offering a solution. So how does Aqua Data Studio help organizations that might be migrating off of Sybase ASE? Migrations can be stressful, but Aqua Data Studio reduces that friction by giving you one unified environment to manage the entire process. You can connect to your Sybase instance and your target instance right in the same interface. You can run assessments on your objects. You can compare schemas, generate migration scripts, and validate the results. You can build synthetic data for testing, so your production data stays protected. You can run side-by-side queries to compare performance and correctness. The biggest benefit is consistency. Instead of switching between multiple tools, scripts, and utilities, everything happens within one workflow. That reduces error, that shortens the project, and it helps your team stay productive. So let's look at Azure Data Studio retirement specifically. Excuse me. For teams who rely on Azure Data Studio, Aqua Data Studio provides a smooth transition because it includes every core feature Azure Data Studio offered, plus additional capabilities that many customers wanted. The query window, object browser, visual explain plans, analytics, schema compare, ER modeling tools, these are all built directly into the application. You do not need to assemble plugins or rely on extensions with varying levels of support. And because Aqua Data Studio supports multi-database environments out of the box, this is a chance to simplify your workflow. You can stop using different tools for SQL Server, Postgres, Oracle, Snowflake, and others. You get one consistent experience that reduces training overhead and improves productivity. So this slide helps us reinforce an important idea. With the right tool set, modernization does not have to be a crisis-driven event. When you use a flexible tool like Aqua Data Studio, you gain control over the pace and structure of your modernization efforts. You can evaluate new platforms without abandoning your old ones. You can phase migrations gradually. You can test workloads side by side without having to learn entirely new tools. And you can train your teams consistently instead of trying to keep up with multiple vendor-provided utilities. This approach reduces disruption, and increases your options. It turns modernization from a forced reaction into an intentional, manageable process. So let's emphasize one of the most important mindset shifts in the entire presentation. When a tool is retired or a vendor changes course, most organizations focus on finding a replacement. But that approach only guarantees that you will repeat the same situation again in a few years. Instead, look at transitions as strategic upgrade opportunities. You can streamline your stack. You can consolidate tools. You can choose platforms with long roadmaps and strong communities. You can adopt workflows that span multiple databases. And this mindset gives you long-term stability. It reduces risk, it simplifies training, and it prevents you from being locked into another tool or environment that limits your options. So to close things out, let me bring together the main ideas from today. Change is not slowing down. Tools will continue to evolve. Some will be retired, some will fall behind. The question is not whether change will happen. The question is whether your environment can handle it. Rigid, single-purpose tools limit your ability to adapt. They create risk, they create cost, and they put your roadmap in the hands of the vendor. Flexible architectures give you control. They let you adopt new technologies on your own timeline. They reduce fragmentation, and they make modernization predictable instead of stressful. Aqua Data Studio is built around that idea. It supports a wide range of databases. It gives your team a unified experience, whether they're using Windows, Mac, or Linux, or any database platform that you can think of. And it helps you stay ahead of change instead of reacting to it. The goal is not just to survive transitions. The goal is to build an environment that benefits from them, and with the right tools and the right strategy, that is absolutely possible. So I want to thank everybody for the presentation. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions now. If you have any questions, put them in the chat box, or and then Simona will read them off, and I'll try to answer them here if we can.
Yeah, thanks so much, Darren. That was a really great explanation. Our organization can stay ahead of technology changes. We're just about to jump into the Q&A portion of the session. But before, I wanted to remind that today's session just focused on a small part of what Aqua Data Studio can do. As the industry-leading multifunction database tool, we offer functionality that includes over 40 features to support coding and database development, data analysis and BI, data modeling, database administration, and everything you need to function as an effective peer in a modern enterprise environment. I'll go ahead with the Q&A. We have a couple of questions. So the first question, someone is asking, with SQL Anywhere, the end of maintenance will come in 2028. Will you deliver an analog functionality for ASA?
I'm sorry, Simona, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, someone is asking, with SQL Anywhere, the end of maintenance will come in 2028. Will you deliver an analog functionality for ASA?
Yeah, so that one I will have to check with product management to see what is on the roadmap. 2028 is a little down the road, so that might be something that they won't be deciding on until maybe late of next year or in 2027. Trying to stay on top of things that are disappearing now, and being able to provide a solution for those is the priority, of course.
Thank you. Someone else is asking, can you migrate the other way, so from Oracle to PostgreSQL?
Yeah, so it's important to know that Aqua Data Studio, it's not a migration tool. It does have a lot of capability built in to allow you to do different types of migration solutions. So you can do ER modeling, and you can convert those models and build out into different platforms. You can do imports and exports. You can do schema compares, but there's no transformation portion that you would typically see in a dedicated ETL or ELT tool. But it does give you the ability to do build out a script to generate, let's say, build out a model of Oracle, convert that model into a Postgres, and then execute that model or that script so that you can have a matching structure. And then you can do schema compares to ensure that everything is transitioned properly. You can do imports and exports of data, but again, there's no transformation. So there may be some manual adjustment there because it's not a dedicated ETL or ELT tool. I hope that helps answer your question.
Thank you, Darren. Yes, I think there is a follow-up on that. So the following question is, do you actively support the migration of tables, triggers, events, store function, and store procedure from SQL Anywhere to PostgreSQL?
So again, because Aqua Data Studio, it's a IDE tool, not a dedicated ETL tool. So some of that, like your triggers and functions, that stuff's going to have to be manually done. It's with Aqua Data Studio. It can get the bulk of what you may need to do with the building of the script of your tables and views and indexes and that sort of thing. But as far as your stored procedures and functions and that, typically, that requires a more focused ETL type tool to handle all in a single step. So there may be some manual migration that you may have to do because it's not, again, a dedicated migration tool.
Thank you, Darren. I think we have time for maybe one more question, a couple of more. So someone is asking, if Azure Data Studio is being retired, why choose Aqua Data Studio instead of moving to VS Code with the SQL extension like Microsoft recommends?
So that's a good question. VS Code with the SQL extension is a general purpose editor. It's not designed to be a full database IDE. Aqua Data Studio provides an integrated experience with built-in query tools, visual explain plans, schema compare, ER modeling, debugging, and visual analytics, charting, all in one place. So you do not need to install multiple plugins or stitch together a workflow. If you want the same level of capability as your Data Studio offered, plus a broader multi-database environment, Aqua Data Studio is a much smoother and more complete replacement than Visual Studio.
Thank you, Darren. So the last question, we use Sybase AC today. How exactly does Aqua Data Studio help with the migration if we decide to move to SQL Server, PostgreSQL, or Oracle?
Good question. Again, just to reiterate, Aqua is not a dedicated ETL tool, but it does connect to both Sybase and any one of those target platforms, all in the same interface. So you can directly compare schemas, You can synchronize objects. Again, you can generate synthetic data to do testing in that new environment that you've set up. You can script out objects. You can move your data with the import-export capability, and you can then again validate results without ever switching the tool. The product supports the entire workflow from assessment through final validation, and that reduces a lot of time, risk, and tool sprawl during that migration period. Again, if it's a large database environment with a lot of procedures, functions, that sort of thing, a dedicated ETL tool or ELT tool might be a better fit. But if it's like your test environments or whatever, you know, Aqua Data Studio should be able to get you through any of that process.
Great, perfect, thank you. So we are just about out of time, so I'm going to pass Darren's and our sales team email address into the chat. Thanks again for joining us today. I also like to thank you, Darren, for this presentation. This webcast has been recorded, and you will receive an email with the recording link within the next week. We hope to see you again for one of our future sessions, so make sure to check the event section of our resource page, where you can find everything that's coming up. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you again all for joining today and spending the time to look at the changes happening in our industry. The goal was to show that even when tools reach end of life or vendor shift direction, you can stay ahead of that curve by building in flexibility into your data stack, and Aqua Data Studio helps make that possible by giving you a stable multi-platform environment that adapts as your database landscape evolves. And I appreciate your time and hope the session gave you some clear next steps for moving forward with confidence. Have a great day, everybody.